Hey you, it's quarter past 5. I've been awake for a little while, but I was just listening to something on Roxanne Globalist Denier's channel. Very interesting stuff on the Globelite tour that John Smith, as Harry, is doing. I was motivated to make this, and I look a little bit like Stefan Molyneux sitting here, don't I? At this distance, this remove. And at this particular angle, I need to know where the camera is. The camera is there. Now, I called this Mission Impossible because it is one of those things that you can choose not to take. The blue pill route is available to everyone, and most seem to choose it. But for most people who are listening to this channel or me talk, I think the majority are of the red pill persuasion. And if that be the case, the question is, why? You know, we all have that same question. Why would they be doing it? What's the importance of it? And I go now, clearly, let me state clearly, I go further than, you know, they're hiding more land and they're keeping you a slave to enrich their systems or to harvest gold for the Anunnaki or, you know, I'm not saying that there isn't a harvesting of gold and for example, but I'm just, you know, these are things that are too obviously sort of surface level things than, you know, than the deeper things. So the more land, yeah, I got no issue with there probably being more land or other territories or things like that. But I am unwilling to say, you know, this is it. In fact, it would be remiss of me not to be more blunt and say that this is the control position. To say that it's, you know, it's a ring prison and there might be a little bit more land and so on. But there has to be more, and to say to people, you know, all you need to know is that 9/11 was done by the government, the deeper states element of the government, or collusion from aspects of the government. And then all you need to know is that you need to kind of petition your government to change their ways and to root out, you know, ask the Senate to check this, or ask the Lords to go and check on the other hand of the, you know what I mean? I've been doing that for some time. So, but I did realize after about a year of, you know, hammering the chat rooms and stuff in the flat earth conversations, or before that in the 9/11 conversations and so on, and dealing with the kind of folks who don't want to even hear that those things are perhaps questionable. You know, is dealing with a level of blindness and deafness that is absolutely exhausting and absolutely intended to be exhausting. So it was with Flat Earth, and I stepped away for it while Andrea was sort of in pregnancy and Alexander came along, and I was busy with that for the first while, and then this whole energy was building around the sort of activism from people like Josh over at Authentic Intent in America, and Harry, of course, of the John Smith Globelite channel. And that was like, okay, now there's something interesting happening. And so I checked out their stuff and thought, this is what I want to do. And I think it was probably Roxanne or others that were Victoria and others that were pulling together a certain energy, Victoria Rose, pulling together a certain energy that I was drawn to. And that in 2018 we sort of banded together in the first time, for the first time, in a way that was quite powerful and empowering. And long may that continue. It's fair to say. We are really one, it seems, and to me, and it is an individual journey that we're on, but together we are where we're meant to be, I think, sort of helping one another. So, that's really a positive thing, but I feel, absolutely certain that all of these moves, all of this energy, the trajectory, the ability to control the noise levels, it's all been sort of predicted. It's all expected. Hey, I had someone here. Thanks. I'll have a look at the comments later. I should grab my glasses because I look like a fool straining at the phone. I need to stay on my train of thought. My brain can only do so many things at this time of the day. But this was all planned, expected, and I think, and people talk about control release and control agents within the thing and so on. And I think, of course, that seems to be the usual way of it being done. So, what have I learned from that? Bearing in mind I had a DMT experience in 2015, which really, wiped away any notion of materialism in the way that we've been taught it in science class, and certainly the materialism of Gucci handbags and Prada shoes. I was going to say high heel shoes, and I imagine the various trolls that would love to use something like that. But that was all wiped away in an instant when my pineal gland was awakened, or whatever process occurred for me to have a quick look above or around, beyond, inside the ether. Inside this space, there is so much more going on, and I got a brief glimpse of that. And there is no materialism in the way that we are fixated upon it. And thus I am so keenly aware now that the way of the system will be to have us at each other's throats still, because the dogma. Firstly, the ball boys are going to stick with their ball. Some of them are going to want to stick to this, even if their hero Donald Trump comes out and tells them that, our Space Force has detected flatness, and they smashed themselves up against the Van Allen radiation belt, if that's a real thing. And along, like in the Virgin thing, because for those ball boys that are still kind of believing in space, it's like we just seem to forget that, Virgin, they all they could do was seemingly fly a rocket off the back of a plane and get it fairly high up, but not really all that high up. I mean, we have to assume that they maybe got to 30 or 40 miles, but that's, even that I think would be conjecture. I haven't looked into the specifics of that stuff, because when back in the day of the Virgin Galactic, I was still a believer, and I thought Richard Branson's spaceports and his things were going to be a real thing. But apparently a crash, and now we don't have to talk about it anymore. And if that guy died, then if the pilot died, then I, appropriately, sorry for that. He, I'm sure, was just doing his job, and I don't have any animosity to him or even to Richard Branson for that matter. I think that Richard Branson is a control agent. When he was getting to do his balloon solo balloon business around the world and so on, he was breaking sort of records of what we can do and what we can see, and he was able to go and see things perhaps that very few have ever got to see. So that man knows shit, Anyway, he's not why I'm talking to you. I don't want to talk about him, because you see, ultimately, all of these characters, and whether it be Richard Branson or Tommy Robinson or Donald Trump, Theresa May, and whether she will or won't say something to do with Brexit, which is again just another tool, a toy, a ball to inflate and to irritate and keep people squabbling with each other and taking sides, protecting their nest egg, or worrying about others coming to invade their space and their opportunity, and their limited opportunity, because it's become so difficult to perhaps keep the old roof over their head. So the genie, as I've said before now, is out of the bottle with the flat earth, and there's no putting it back in at this point in time, in this paradigm. I was saying to Andrea earlier on, she was also up. She's gone back to bed because Alexander was crying a little while ago, so it's given me this opportunity to come and stream out. She was saying that, shit, what was she saying? You can fast forward this. Thankfully, there's fast forward feature if you're not watching this live. We could continue barracking. Sorry to bring in an Obama reference in there, but we could continue barracking government. Obama and Osama, they did that to us on purpose, didn't they? That's just mind messery, yeah? That's just wordplay, it's spookism, it's kind of, it's spellcraft to mess with your head, to create a fear of an ethos or a dogma or a group or a color or a creed. And the ballers are going to stick to their ball, even if Donald Trump's, some of them anyway, will stick to their ball. And even if they don't, they will be so bedazzled and bedazed by the revelations that they will follow the edict of whoever tells them that. And it won't be the little voices that I listen to on the internet. I would suspect that it'll be the mainstream media providing the sorts of voices that we've normally had. Cardinal Hume of the all of this shit. And I think that's designed to I'm just thinking, me pulling that one eye thing, that'll be used by someone, I'm sure, to say that I'm somehow, because you see, this is really, it doesn't matter where you get to. There's going to be people wanting to shoot you down. So while you continue the fight, when you continue the kind of the dialectic, you continue to be a target. And you have to obviously be, as a target, you have to defend yourself. This is what I found myself in Angola in 1987. Doesn't matter how much you love humanity. When the bombs are raining and the bullets are flying and the rocket-propelled grenades are coming at your face, you need to do something. You can turn away and run or whatever, but for you who are here with an open heart, then I suspect that you have already agreed to accept the mission impossible. And it might be that the mission is to ascend something, somehow, in some way, vibratory frequencies and so on, energies, torus fields, we're giving off these energies and we're affecting change by the positivity or negativity that we are emitting. And some say that we emit this energy deeply into the ether, and that ether is either enhanced or enfeebled by our etheric contribution. So while you continue to fight over flat or AE or square model, and the way that the moon works and the way that the sun is, and which book we're reading, and I think you are going to be part of the energetic system that is able to allow the fueling of the continuation of the status quo or the new world order status quo, the replacement to whatever comes, if there is to be a paradigm shift of that sort. It doesn't matter. I don't know that it matters. I think that now that if you're here, then you should be less concerned about the intransigence of those who can't see now and those who can't hear now. I want to be a message giver, and I'm not discouraging people from being out there and giving messages and putting out there, but it's more about, for yourself, about what do you get from it, and if the system wants you to keep fighting, then do you really want to keep fighting if that's what they want you to do? Because last time I looked, there was very little that they want you to do that's in your best interests. I know for myself that if I'm out in the street, a loving and generously kind of warm spirit, and my kind of toroidal kind of energy is warm and so on, and I felt that when I was talking in Brighton the other day to this Buddhist. Was he Buddhist? He may have been something more, something different from that, but we had a really nice conversation, and the toroidal energy between us was warm and so on, and it's like, contrast that with dealing with somebody who is just who's abrasive. Well, it becomes abrasive, it becomes an abrasive encounter. And actually, what you do, honestly, is you go home and perhaps think about that abrasive encounter in a way that is not the same as how you would think about that more spiritually warm encounter. And I think we want to surely move past the the kind of the warring and more into the warm. But it starts with ourselves. So until we do the work for ourselves, until we take time to do the work for ourselves, on ourselves, in ourselves, then it'll be easier simply just to go and stand there and continue to have the same relationship. I mean, think about it in a mother, daughter, father, son couple relationship where, you continue to complain about the bedroom and being untidy, for example, and they continue to push back about, not you being an overbearing parent or whatever. Until somebody does something differently, then that relationship is going to continue to fester and mature in that way. Whereas, if it's you find a loving way forward, then you become happier in your day-to-day interactions with her, your child, or whatever. And maybe over time she becomes, or the other party becomes improved in that way too. But really, it's about you. So something I learned on the DMT experience was that attachment to these things of this world are futile, I want to say that like nothing matters, because that was this feeling that I got over and over and over again while I was in the experience, that nothing here really matters. It's hard to reconcile myself with that. I feel like things do matter, and it matters whether or not I raise my game. I am the better man, become the better man, the better version of myself, the better human person, or the better soul. Perhaps there's an onward kind of bonus. Not to me personally, because I think that the me personally thing is the bit you don't want to get too attached to. The David Mannel, or David of the Mannel family, more accurately. I don't think you want to become too fixated on the idea of that self so much as the collective. And I think the collective humanity that doesn't somehow seem to care what we do. But when enough of the individuals care, then I guess it will be the case that a collective cares. And I'll do my part to try and raise that. I'll do my part to try and raise that. But not at the expense of myself and those closest to me, So what do? You have to come to know thyself fully. You have to be good with yourself. You have to be doing those practices of stillness, of meditation, of clarifying the mind and the body. And perhaps in so doing, the soul is clarified. The Trinity satisfied. And in that way, I can find myself like becoming the higher man, becoming the better man, somebody who I admire, although I don't agree with everything that he thinks or does necessarily, but a guy called John St. Julian, Baba, John St. Julian, who set up like a children's trust and started very small, like caring for a few children, a few homeless children, a few disabled children, and mums with disabled children, single mums, and so on. And it's morphed. It's got a place called Feather's Tail in Uganda. I hope I haven't got that wrong. Not Uganda, is it Tanzania? Tanzania. Feather's Tail in Tanzania. Fantastic achievement. Wonderful, wonderful. And, you know, there's a guy who pulled himself from being, you know, just like a regular materialist lad, more interested in his motor than anything else, to, you know, walking kind of barefoot and wild hair, long haired and what have you in Africa and helping hundreds, if not thousands now, of people. And, you know, what a wonderful example of how a person can turn themselves into somebody really good. I don't know why his example came to my mind, but, you know, kudos to the man. And I've learned a lot about, you know, the pineal gland and things like that from him. Yeah, it's interesting. I won't belabor that. I just think that if there is an ascension to be happening, then it has to happen within you. Don't wait for it to come from without, some external kind of thing. The ascension has to happen with you. And whatever shit is coming down the pipeline, if such shit there's shit coming down the pipeline all the time, but if there's a tsunami of shit to come down the pipeline, then the best you can do, whatever shit comes down the pipeline, is to be, you know, right with you, and you know, in a good place with those things around you. This flat Earth thing has cost me dearly in terms of friendships and connections to certain kind of parts of my family and so on. Incredible, really. You know, that's, I don't know if that's the microcosm of the macrocosm, but I think in the biblical texts, they do advise you that if you're going to take the kind of Christ journey, then you're going to have to do it alone. So it does mean cutting out some of the noise. Anyway, I don't want to waffle. I do see there's a comment there. Morning, glad. Sorry, I can't read that. This is a prep seeker. I'm running over the dog farm, yeah. On Saturday, yeah. Is that a Brando? Yeah, I'm losing close friends and family from this, yeah. Yeah. Open friend. Taking this on. Open friend. To connect with others, yeah, like us, yeah, for sure. Hey, hi, Roxanne. I used your clip twice. The first time it was about 20 minutes in, and I used it again in credits. Oh. Oh, wow. What's that? Woody? And then, oh, okay, well, you can... I'll check it out, mate. Yeah, cool. Hey, that's cool. Sometimes I feel like I'm a little bit out on my own here. I know that there are others that have been doing much more than me in the flat Earth thing, and in the spiritual, or the, you know, and the esoteric thing, which is something that I never really gave any thought to as a growing up. I always sort of poo-pooed it. Um, but you know, the DMT left me in no doubt, and it changed me from an atheist to a believer in that short space of time, and or knower, because it was my experience, my absolutely waking, alert, totally alert experience of being something much more powerful than this human avatar that I'm currently in. And I didn't think that this applied to me uniquely, but it's certainly what I saw was that, or what I realized, I came to know was that. So, we, as uncomfortable as all of this is, I think we are somehow preordained to walk this way. And therefore, the things that I'm saying about moving beyond the fight, I deliver the information, deliver all the information, tell the world how corrupt and how deviously devilish, despicable the world around them truly is when you pull back the curtain. You really have a responsibility to do that. Oh, I need to set up my power leak here. I apologize for the technical delay in services. I'm running out of juice. Bang. You really have I think, although it doesn't matter, you can opt out. You can take the blue pill at any time. But if you've accepted the mission, it's not impossible. I don't think it's impossible. But I think you have to move from the squabble. You have to move from the fight and have that time for that inner work. Yesterday was brilliant for me. I was pruning a pear tree, and it wasn't long. I mean, it was a couple of hours in the tree in total, I suppose. But and another tree. So I had a good few hours of work, maybe 6 hours in the garden. 6 hours, yeah. And then I'm outdoors with Alexander for at least another 2 hours of each day, at least, maybe more, depending on the weather. And all in all, that's a lot of time connecting with nature. And for me, the pruning is like, helps to clear the mind, and I may not be a full-on meditator, and perhaps I need to do more. I did transcendental meditation as a child, actually. My mom had me doing it from the age of 13 or something, 12. Not that I kind of followed it through, Again, it was like too woo-woo for me. But I'm just kind of putting it to you that, you will, if flat Earth becomes the barrier, the ice ring that keeps your mind contained for an unknown length of time, until such time as the governments or enough people have got to a point where where they where they reject government in a big enough way that they lose their credibility, their ability, and then not only that whatever is in its stead isn't some sort of Tommy Robinson-esque control group. Boris Johnson, Miliband, all these creatures, and Trump, and the Clintons, and all that. Oh my lord! And Oprah Winfrey. Perhaps they'll give us Oprah Winfrey. And people will go, yes, now we got a black woman in charge, and that's definitely going to mean Guantanamo is going to close, and oil companies will have to disclose what free energy is, and all that sort of stuff. No, that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. But you can fight about it forever, for as long as it takes. Or you can find this other way, which is more like I don't know. I don't know. I'm not asking people. I'm not saying don't be actively pursuing lines or avenues of approach that allow for the unpicking of the paradigm. I think that if you're a whiz with a computer and you can put together a clip that shows NASA fakery and it's powerful and it can, you know what I mean, or you're just a great speaker, or you're some other way, people who do brilliant experiments and so on. There's things going on all the time, pressures are being put on government all the time. People are doing their thing all the time. So I'm not discouraging people from doing their thing. I'm encouraging people to do their thing, but do it for themselves first. Do your inner work first, rather than, if all you do is go out there and fight for fluoride in toothpaste, for example, or the lady that I've met a few times at Speaker's Corner who fights against chemtrails, or tries to raise the profile of chemtrails, and who used to be like a major anti vivisection and all the anti-cruelty, in the cosmetics industry. She was one of those who'd kind of go around to labs and break up animals and so on, and all credit to her. But of course the business continues, the fighting goes on, but the business gets to continue. And what if they say, oh well, you're no longer allowed to use animal testing in this one, well, we'll just test them on humans then, or okay, we can't do it like that, it'll cost us X amount more to do it like this, so we have to pass that on to you, the customer. So it's always a win-win situation for the business, no matter what you kind of what you're fighting for. I admit that I would love to see a time when people realize they didn't need the sort of government control and mechanisms that we have. I would love to see a time when the economic situation was revoked, and that this is not about wanting to take away from people the things that they have, more like to give everybody access to a lot more and so on. But those are the material things of this world, to be honest, and although those things are nice to have, and we would love to be economically sure and able to travel, I think that we're meant to be here to kind of explore. We should be Dora the Explorer. We should be out there doing things and having the opportunity to go and travel and see beautiful nature and to encounter things and so on in a beautiful way. But we as humanity are not really there yet. We're far more entranced with the Sodom and Gomorrah aspects of modernity and you know me and glitzy and so on. When you watch the sea of humanity moving around, say London, you know I'm just not one of those people that can see. I'm not one of those people who can see that there's going to be some sort of energetic shift. Andrea listens to guys who talk like that. That there's these energetic shifts that are happening, and I'm not saying they aren't happening. I just kind of it's still a little bit of a reach for me to accept that there's going to be an energetic shift in which pulses of energy or energy of forces are coming from above or the sun or whatever, and they bring about this rising of 4D consciousness or whatever, and then in that case, people are far more able to take on this new information. They can accept things better, and so on and so on and so on. See, like if you take the pineal gland, the fluoride, so what they tell us is that the fluoride encases the pineal gland and sort of creates like a hard shell. It's a tiny, tiny thing in the pineal gland, so it's only a a tiny pebble-sized bit of calcite or whatever fluoride that's kind of compacted around this thing, right? But in the tiny world, you'd have to take a miniature kind of pickaxe down into the brain and smash away at it for some time, or in like my case, have the DMT experience, rip it apart in an instant. And have that that fluoride kind of barrier impregnated or broken open. I can't see that. I don't see that happening. I think that the system is preparing itself for much longer haul, like it has more time. I mean, I love certain theories that, like my friend Martin Kenny has this 2020 or 2022 timeline, and I'm not saying that that's wrong. But I also think that the evidence around me suggests that the system continues to prepare itself for a sort of much longer timeline, where it's putting in place the mechanisms for even more concentrated cities of what's the word I'm looking for? Order followers, conformists, people who are willing to kind of do whatever they're told to kind of keep the crust over their head. So I think that. I mean, you could argue that they're just simply keeping people busy. They're keeping the flow of the economy because they need that churn. They need that activity to keep people at a relative level of wealth, such that people, the Indians don't get too upset. But so my thinking is that they're the security net, the camera, the CCTV network, the public transportation network, in central London, the incidence of building, the amount of building in the 25 years I've lived here, I don't know that I've ever seen it anymore, perhaps during the Docklands period in the 80s, 70s, 80s when they were building that up. But, gosh, there's areas of London, and the density of the population is increasing because they're building more and more of these rabbit hutches they call condos or flats or whatever. And people are grateful to spend 20, 25 years working in this, in the smog to pay for the little box that they've been fortunate enough to be within 100 paces or a mile of the river or whatever. So I think that they're in it for the longer haul. They like having this constant narrative of fear running through things, this constant narrative of imminent change, imminent doom, whether it be that you're into Nibiru or you're into economic collapses, which are obviously much easier to orchestrate than celestial bodies, although I think they're trying with the latter very hard. What is it that Mencken, H.L. Mencken, is famous for having said that the primary or sole purpose of government, which means the control of the mind, the sole purpose of government is to create a never-ending series of hobgoblins with which to frighten the populace. Yeah. And so, the kind of the Mayan type doomsday prophecies and coming new age prophecies and all of these sorts of things are perhaps some of the more ancient false flags on the mind, or the hoaxes of an ancient time. I'm optimistically hoping that there is this kind of 7,000 year cycle, and we're at that kind of cusp. We're at that time where, although humans have once been extremely high intelligence and ability and so on, we were brought low into a dark age or a gloomy age in a middle age period a few hundred years ago, and then if you can see our sort of building, for example, we went from high building to barely a few stones and mortar is all we can rustle up, and now we've kind of got a little bit better than stones and mortar, but it's mostly computers and Lego kind of Meccano stuck together buildings that we see with a bit of glass tacked on the outside. None of the beautiful, handcraft from the days before. However, we may well be building ourselves up to this sort of higher period of knowledge at which we are able to ascend, at which we are able to do something more than we ever thought possible. But we've only just worked that out, or we're only just starting to work that out. And either the control system needs the hive mind to do all the legwork and the donkey work, which is what some people are doing out there, to find all this beautiful information and bring all this fantastic ancient knowledge together. So that's the one option. And the other is that that they've been, as I said earlier, calling the shots, calling the plays, determining the duration of the trajectory all along, and that is just part of the sort of constant need for the series of hobgoblins to keep people entranced in fear. Then this idea that there is a shift coming and so on, and a change, and wait for this new Christ to come, as it were. This is exactly what the thing of propaganda and mind control is made of. So we can't know these things, with any certainty. I think we can only know ourselves, and while I found myself distracted for a while, when I came into being more vocal in the Flat Earth, I'd been obviously biding my time, but when in June I sort of stepped out of the shadows, I was in a very strong place, and I found that in the summer it started to, certain things started to weigh on me. It was like a test. And, this is where I am now. I think that we are all being tested in ways. And if we decide to go back to the blue pill, it doesn't matter. If we decide to go back to Sodom and Gomorrah, okay. But for me, I've got to leave the Sodom and Gomorrah mindset behind. I've got to move up and onward, and I have no ill will to those who stay behind. It's a little hard to be attacked by those who want to stay behind. It's one of the challenges that I'm having to learn. Because in the way that I love my little boy, Alexander, is the way that I love my other two children when they were in that age. And, it reminds me that we were all this age and we were all this loved and we all should be this loved and we should all love one another in that same way. It's only once the division starts happening out of. So, so that's really where I'm at, is that it's kind of comes back to the love, and it comes back to I suppose loving yourself, and then definitely loving yourself. And that's one of the hardest things to learn to do, because we've been kind of divorced from that by certain things I won't belabor, but I think that's really the challenge. You come from love. If you can achieve that love, then maybe in some ways it doesn't matter about in some respects, when people say it doesn't matter so much about the shape of the earth, I kind of can go with that to a point, But I do think that there is this mission to raise the whole, and that seems to me the mission, not impossible, but possible, when sufficient people raise their own vibration and their own energetic output. But it does mean leaving the things of this world behind, It doesn't mean walking around in sackcloth, and it doesn't mean living in a tent on a hill. Yeah, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean giving it all away. I don't know. I think I probably said enough. I see there's some folks here chatting. Hey, well, it's awesome that you stopped by to chat, and I hope to add more to the conversation, but I hope this has been useful for you, and that it's all delivered really in love. I don't have I don't have an agenda other than trying to do the right thing, trying to do good. Good is God, and whatever you call a creator, or the most high energies or source that we come from, that we emanate from, that we're a part of, that we're one with, that we're connected to. Just think like this for a second, that in the same way that the George Orwell stories were likely fed to us, and our children have been read these books in school books and so on, and a number of others, including the Dracula series, and my children had to read their own shit in school. But the documentary, the movie They Live by John Carpenter, 1988, They Live. That movie, right? It does create a them and us situation, And in this context, that could be read as the Jews and the non-Jews, the Gentiles. It could be that. People might even see it in other ways. Maybe it's like aliens or something, or from other land people. I don't know. I had this crazy experience on the DMT. I'm not going to talk about it now, but it did make me think that it was like possible that there were different beings here. But I prefer to operate on the basis that there is, as far as I can tell, only one human being. Most of them are deeply deceived. That might include me, but most are deeply deceived about who and what they are and why we're here. And so, what am I to do about that? During Andrea's long labor with Alexander, it lasted more than 3 days. She, in the final hours before they decided finally to C-section her, was going through a kind of inner journey, an inner hell, a pain, and a place that only women who've had childbirth and perhaps people with some other similar experience may have experienced this, but very, very dark place all by yourself. I don't mean dark in a bad way, but dark as in everything else around you no longer matters or is no longer there. And during those hours, she had this one song stuck in her head, going round and round and round. She only told me about this the next day. But the song was one that she learned in church as a child, and many of you will have come across this little thing, and it goes like this. This little light of mine, I ain't gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I ain't gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I ain't gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. And I think really that's really what you're meant to do. You're a star, you're meant to shine, and in so doing, you will ignite other stars. Just made me think of what I used to believe in all the fucking NASA bullshit about nurseries, galaxy nurseries. I used to give this to my children and show them the Hubble photographs. Oh, look at these beautiful photographs. Just the distance across that is 45 light years. And in that space, which is like so many zeros of numbers of miles, in that space, there are stellar nurseries in which stars are being born out of this dust cloud. I mean, it's magnificent. What a load of crap. But is that what we are? We are stellar nurseries. That we have the potential to be stellar nurseries. That we can rise stars. We can create stars from ourselves and from then outward, like a nursery. Let's just take my little boy Alexander, for example, My potential to create a star out of that little boy, and I don't mean like a football star or a Hollywood star, a human star with a divine higher insight and awareness and consciousness and so on. Now that's a start, isn't it? So the genie's out of the bottle. Let's keep rubbing that little lamp. Hey? Let's keep rubbing that lamp, but make sure you're working on yourself. Keep the oil in your own lamp full. Because if your own lamp is full, if your oil is full, you can weather the storms that are coming, whatever they are. I hope you have a good day. I've got to go.